The massive crystal spires of Zephyria Prime pierced the purple sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that bathed the planet in an eternal twilight glow. Deep within the royal palace, past corridors lined with floating memory crystals and gravity-defying sculptures, lay the most sacred place in the entire Zephyrian Empire, the Dragon Sanctum. Marcus Chen pressed himself against the cool metal wall, his heart hammering against his ribs. The 15-year-old human shouldn't be here. No one should be here except the Empress herself and her most trusted dragon keepers. But the sounds coming from beyond the massive doors had drawn him like a magnet. Sounds that made his chest ache with an emotion he couldn't name. The corridor stretched empty in both directions, illuminated by the soft blue glow of bioluminescent panels. Marcus had been working in the palace kitchens for 3 months now, ever since his transport ship had crashed on this world, and the Empress had decided to keep the human survivors as curiosities rather than slaves. Most of his fellow humans worked in the lower levels, but Marcus had shown an unusual ability to understand the complex Zephyrian language, earning him a position preparing meals for the palace staff. The sounds came again, deep, mournful wails that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. Marcus knew those sounds, even though he'd never heard them before. They were the cries of creatures in pain, creatures that were slowly dying. His fingers found the maintenance access panel beside the great doors. Back on Earth, his father had been an engineer, and Marcus had inherited both his technical skills and his stubborn refusal to ignore suffering. The panel yielded to his touch, its biometric scanner somehow accepting his human genetics as valid. Perhaps the Zephyrians hadn't programmed it to exclude his species, never imagining a human would make it this far into the palace. The massive doors slid open with a whisper, revealing a sight that took Marcus's breath away. The Dragon Sanctum was a vast cavern carved from living crystal, its walls pulsing with veins of light that flowed like slow rivers. Floating platforms connected different levels of the space, creating a three-dimensional maze of perches and nesting areas, and everywhere, dragons. But these weren't the mighty creatures of human legend. The Zephyrian dragons were beings of pure energy and crystalline matter, their bodies translucent and shimmering with internal light. They looked like living sculptures of spun glass and captured starlight. Some were small enough to perch on a person's shoulder, while others stretched 20 feet from nose to tail. Each one was unique, their crystal formations creating patterns of impossible beauty. And every single one was dying. Marcus could see it in the way their internal light flickered and dimmed. Their crystalline bodies were developing cracks and dark spots, like cancer spreading through living gemstones. Many lay curled on their platforms, their energy so low that their bodies had become nearly transparent. The mournful songs that had drawn him here were their death songs, a harmony of pain that spoke of extinction approaching with each passing day. Near the center of the vast space, a magnificent dragon larger than any of the others lay on a platform of pure crystal. Her body was a masterwork of flowing lines and graceful curves, but great fissures ran along her sides, and her internal light pulsed weakly. This had to be the mother dragon, the ancient being whose offspring filled the sanctum. She raised her great head as Marcus entered, and her eyes, like twin galaxies, fixed on him with surprise and wariness. Marcus approached slowly, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. The smaller dragons near the entrance had noticed him now, and their songs grew more agitated. But beneath the alarm, he heard something else. Curiosity. "I won't hurt you," Marcus whispered, though he knew the dragons probably couldn't understand human speech. "I just want to help." The mother dragon tilted her head, studying him with those ancient, intelligent eyes. Marcus had always been good with animals back on Earth, but this was something beyond anything he'd ever experienced. The dragon's gaze seemed to peer into his very soul, weighing his intentions, measuring his spirit. Slowly, carefully, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of fruit he'd taken from the kitchen. It was a local variety called star fruit, its skin golden and its flesh supposedly filled with concentrated nutrients. He'd been planning to eat it later, but now he held it out toward the nearest small dragon. The creature, no bigger than a house cat, fluttered down from its perch on wings that looked like they were made of captured aurora. It landed a few feet away from Marcus, its body pulsing with nervous energy. Its internal light was so dim that Marcus could see the poor thing was barely clinging to life. "Come on, little one," Marcus said softly. "You need food." But as the small dragon approached the fruit, Marcus noticed something strange. The creature wasn't just weak from hunger. Its crystalline body was actually missing essential minerals, creating gaps in its structure that prevented it from properly processing energy. It was like trying to run a computer with half the circuits removed. An idea began to form in Marcus's mind, something that should have been impossible, but felt absolutely right. He bit into the star fruit himself, chewing slowly, then held out his hand toward the small dragon. "Trust me," he whispered. The dragon hesitated, then approached and gently touched its crystalline snout to Marcus's palm. The moment their skin made contact, Marcus felt something extraordinary happen. His human biochemistry, so different from the Zephyrian dragons, created a bridge that the dragon's failing systems could use. Nutrients flowed from Marcus to the creature, but more than that, his robust human life force provided the stability the dragon needed to repair its damaged crystalline matrix. The small dragon's body suddenly blazed with renewed light, its cracks sealing themselves as its internal energy synchronized with Marcus's biological rhythms. The creature trilled with joy, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, and other dragons began to flutter down from their perches. Marcus spent the next hour moving through the sanctum, offering his hand to dragon after dragon. Each time he made contact, the same miraculous healing occurred. His human physiology, evolved under a different sun and shaped by billions of years of separate evolution, provided exactly what the dying dragons needed to stabilize their crystal matrices and restore their failing energy systems. The mother dragon watched it all with growing amazement. As Marcus approached her platform, she lowered her great head to his level, her galaxy eyes reflecting wonder and gratitude. "I don't know how long this will last," Marcus told her honestly, placing both hands on her crystalline snout. "But maybe it will be enough." The healing that flowed between them was the most powerful yet. The great fissures in her body sealed themselves with veins of new crystal, and her internal light blazed like a newborn star. She sang then, a song of joy and rebirth that echoed through the entire sanctum, and every dragon in the space joined their voice to hers. Marcus staggered as the healing completed, drained but exhilarated. He'd done something impossible, something that would change everything. But as he turned toward the exit, planning to slip away before anyone discovered what had happened, he found his path blocked. Empress Valeria stood in the doorway, her tall, elegant form wrapped in robes that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself. Her face, beautiful in the alien way of her people, with its high cheekbones and silver-blue skin, was transformed by an expression of absolute fury. Her 4 arms were crossed, and energy crackled around her fingers like trapped lightning. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the power to shatter mountains. "You will explain yourself. Now." Behind her stood a full squad of the Imperial Guard, their plasma weapons trained on Marcus. Their insectoid faces were hidden behind gleaming masks, but their body language spoke of readiness to fire at a moment's notice. Marcus looked back at the dragons, all of them now healthy and glowing with renewed life, then turned to face the Empress. He was just a 15-year-old boy from Earth, a kitchen worker who'd stumbled into something far beyond his understanding. But he'd saved these incredible creatures. And whatever happened next, that would always be true. "Your Majesty," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I can explain everything. But first, you should know that your dragons are dying because they're missing something essential in their diet, something that only humans can provide." The Empress's eyes narrowed, and the energy around her fingers intensified. "Impossible! The dragons have thrived for 10,000 years before your species ever reached the stars. You dare to suggest that we, their guardians for countless generations, do not understand their needs?" "I'm not saying you did anything wrong," Marcus said quickly, "but something has changed. Maybe it's the environment, or maybe it's something in their breeding. All I know is that they were dying, and now they're not." The mother dragon chose that moment to rise from her platform, her restored body magnificent in its crystal perfection. She approached the Empress with slow, graceful steps, her song now a melody of contentment and health. When she reached Valeria, she gently nuzzled her sovereign with obvious affection. The Empress's anger faltered as she saw the transformation in her beloved dragons. These creatures were more than pets or symbols of power. They were the soul of Zephyrian civilization, the living embodiment of her people's connection to the cosmic forces that shaped their world. To see them healthy and vital after months of watching them slowly fade was overwhelming. "How?" she whispered, her 4 hands reaching up to stroke the mother dragon's crystalline snout. "How is this possible?" Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would determine not just his fate, but potentially the future of human-Zephyrian relations. "Because," he said, "sometimes the solution to an impossible problem comes from the most unexpected place. Your dragons weren't just hungry for food. They were hungry for something that only exists in the biochemistry of species that evolved far from here, under different suns and in different gravity. They needed what humans call hybrid vigor, the stability that comes from genetic and biochemical diversity." The Empress stared at him, her mind clearly racing as she processed the implications. Around the sanctum, dragons continued to sing their songs of joy and renewal, living proof of the miracle that had occurred. "If this is true," she said slowly, "then everything changes. The dragons, the Empire, our understanding of life itself." "Yes, Your Majesty," Marcus replied. "Everything changes, but I think it changes for the better." The guards still held their weapons ready, waiting for their Empress's command. The dragons sang their crystal songs. And in the balance between them all, the future of 2 species hung in the crystalline air of the sanctum, waiting to be decided by the wisdom of an alien ruler and the courage of a human boy who had dared to reach out his hand to creatures of living light. The silence in the dragon sanctum stretched like a taut wire, broken only by the gentle humming of the newly healed dragons. Empress Valeria's 4 arms remained crossed, her silver-blue skin shimmering with the faint energy patterns that revealed the depth of her concentration. Her galaxy-colored eyes moved from Marcus to the dragons and back again, calculating possibilities that challenged everything she thought she knew about the universe. "Captain Zex," she said without turning around, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Lower your weapons, all of you. Withdraw to the outer corridor. I will handle this personally." The insectoid captain of her guard hesitated. "Your Majesty, the human could be dangerous. We don't fully understand what he's done here. That is precisely why I need to investigate without the distraction of armed guards," Valeria replied, her tone brooking no argument. "The dragons trust him. Until I understand why, he is under my personal protection." The guards filed out reluctantly, their chittering voices expressing concern in their native language. When the great doors sealed shut, leaving only Marcus, the Empress, and the dragons in the vast crystal chamber, the atmosphere changed completely. The formal tension of an imperial confrontation gave way to something more intimate and uncertain. Valeria moved with the fluid grace of her people, her robes shifting color as they caught and reflected the light from the dragons' bodies. She approached the mother dragon, who had remained close to Marcus throughout the exchange. With 4 hands, she could examine the great creature more thoroughly than any human could, running her fingers along the newly healed crystalline formations. "These cracks," she murmured, tracing lines that had been gaping fissures just an hour before. "They're not just sealed, they're stronger than they were originally. The crystal matrix has been reinforced with something I've never seen before." Marcus watched nervously as the Empress conducted her examination. He could feel the mother dragon's contentment through their connection, a warm presence in the back of his mind that he was only beginning to understand. The other dragons had settled on perches around the sanctum, but they remained alert, watching the interaction between their healer and their traditional guardian. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, then stopped as Valeria held up one hand for silence. "Dr. Thessarian will want to analyze this," she said, apparently thinking aloud. "But first, I need to understand the scope of what has occurred here. How many dragons did you treat?" Marcus looked around the sanctum, counting quickly. "Maybe 30 of the smaller ones, and about 10 of the medium-sized ones, plus the mother dragon. But there are more here that I haven't reached yet." "Show me," Valeria commanded. "Demonstrate this healing process while I observe." The Empress's scientific approach surprised Marcus. He'd expected either immediate punishment or dismissal of his claims, not a careful investigation. But then again, the Zephyrians had built an interstellar empire through their mastery of crystal technology and energy manipulation. They would naturally want to understand any new phenomenon. Marcus approached a young dragon that had been too weak to come down from its high perch earlier. The creature was beautiful, its body a delicate tracery of blue and silver crystal, but dark spots marred its internal structure like a disease. When Marcus extended his hand, the dragon fluttered down hesitantly. "Watch carefully," Marcus said to the Empress. "The connection happens the moment we touch." The dragon's crystalline snout touched Marcus's palm, and immediately the sanctum filled with a soft golden glow that seemed to emanate from the point of contact. Valeria stepped closer, her 4 eyes wide with amazement as she watched the healing process unfold. The dark spots in the dragon's body began to fade as Marcus's human biochemistry provided the stability the creature needed. But more than that, Valeria could see energy patterns she'd never observed before. The dragon's natural crystal matrix was synchronizing with something in the human's biological field, creating a hybrid energy signature that was stronger than either could produce alone. "Extraordinary," she breathed. "Your biological energy field has a completely different harmonic frequency than ours. When the dragon connects with you, it's able to access quantum states that should be theoretically impossible for crystal-based life forms." Marcus didn't understand all the technical terms, but he could feel what the Empress was describing. His human life force, shaped by Earth's unique electromagnetic environment and billions of years of evolution under a yellow sun, provided something that the dragons had been missing. It wasn't just nutrition or energy, it was an entirely different approach to organizing matter at the quantum level. "But why now?" Valeria asked, more to herself than to Marcus. "The dragons have survived for millennia without human intervention. What changed?" The mother dragon approached them, her massive form moving with renewed grace. She lowered her head toward the Empress, and something passed between them that Marcus couldn't detect. Valeria's eyes widened, then filled with a sadness that made her alien features suddenly seem very human. "She's showing me memories," Valeria explained, her voice subdued. "Of the last few years?" As the sickness began to spread. "It started when we expanded the crystal mining operations in the outer systems. We thought we were providing the dragons with purer energy sources. But instead, you poisoned them, Marcus finished, understanding flooding through him. Not intentionally, but the super-pure crystals were too refined. They lacked the trace elements and quantum irregularities that the dragons needed to maintain their biological flexibility. Valeria nodded slowly. In our desire to give them the best of everything, we gave them a diet too pure to sustain life, like trying to survive on distilled water instead of natural spring water. The dragons began developing quantum rigidity, making their crystal matrices too ordered to adapt to changing conditions. The young dragon in Marcus's hands trilled softly as its healing completed, its body now glowing with healthy internal light. It nuzzled his fingers affectionately before flying back to its perch, joining its voice to the chorus of contentment that filled the sanctum. "And humans can fix this because we're chaotic," Marcus said, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. "Our evolution was messy, random, full of contradictions and compromises. We're biological chaos engines compared to the elegant crystalline order of Zephyrian life." "Exactly," Valeria said, and for the first time since entering the sanctum, she smiled. "Your species evolved in a completely different quantum environment. Your biological fields carry the kind of productive disorder that our dragons need to maintain their adaptive flexibility." But even as understanding grew between them, Marcus could sense a deeper problem. He looked around the sanctum, counting the dragons he could see. "Your Majesty, there are thousands of dragons across your empire, aren't there? Not just these few dozen." Valeria's smile faded. "Over 10,000, spread across dozens of worlds. If the sickness has spread to all of them—" She trailed off, the implications clearly overwhelming. "How many humans are in your empire?" Marcus asked quietly. "Fewer than 200. Most are laborers and technicians like yourself, survivors from ships that have crashed or been captured over the years." Valeria's 4 arms gestured helplessly. "Even if every human could perform this healing, the numbers don't work. We can't save them all." The weight of the situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. Marcus had discovered something miraculous, a bridge between species that could heal creatures of living crystal. But the scope of the crisis was so vast that his small miracle seemed almost meaningless. "There has to be another way," Marcus said, his mind racing. "If I understand the science correctly, it's not really about me personally. It's about the quantum signature of human biology, right? The way our life energy is organized." "In theory, yes. But quantum signatures can't be artificially replicated. They're the product of billions of years of evolutionary development under specific cosmic conditions." Valeria paused, studying Marcus with new intensity. Unless what? "There might be a way to amplify and broadcast your biofield signature using our crystal resonance networks. If we could create a resonance pattern based on human quantum signatures and transmit it through the Empire's communication crystals, we might be able to provide the quantum stability all our dragons need." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What would that mean for the humans providing the template? Valeria's hesitation told him everything he needed to know. The process would require mapping your quantum signature in extraordinary detail. It would mean connecting you to the Empire's most powerful crystal arrays, allowing them to read and replicate every aspect of your biological energy field. And the risks? Unknown, Valeria admitted. No human has ever been connected to Zephyrian crystal technology at that level. It could be harmless, or it could be fatal. We simply don't have the data to predict the outcome. The sanctum fell quiet, except for the soft songs of the dragons. Marcus looked up at the magnificent creatures he'd helped heal, thinking about the thousands more across the Empire who were slowly dying. He thought about his fellow humans, trapped on alien worlds, and treated as curiosities or servants. "Your Majesty," he said finally, "if this works, What happens to the humans in your empire? Do we remain prisoners or do we become partners? Valeria studied him for a long moment, her alien features revealing nothing of her thoughts. That would depend entirely on how much trust exists between our species, and on whether humans prove to be as remarkable as this first encounter suggests. Before Marcus could respond, an alarm began echoing through the palace. The crystal walls of the sanctum pulsed with urgent red light, and Valeria's personal communicator activated, projecting a holographic image of Captain Zex. "Your Majesty," the captain's mechanical voice buzzed with urgency. "We have an emergency. The dragons in the outer colonies have begun to die at an accelerated rate. Reports are coming in from 6 different star systems. Whatever is causing their illness has reached a critical stage." Valeria's face went pale. "How long do we have?" "The xenobiologists estimate complete colony extinction within days, not weeks. And Your Majesty, there's more. The colonial governors are demanding immediate action. Some are calling for the destruction of the remaining dragons to prevent further spread of whatever is killing them." "Absolutely not!" Valeria's voice rang with imperial authority. "No dragons will be destroyed. Captain, prepare my fastest ship and alert the Science Council. We have work to do." She turned to Marcus, her galaxy eyes burning with determination and something that might have been hope. "Human boy, you have presented me with both a miracle and an impossible choice. Will you help me save my empire's soul, even if it means risking your life?" Marcus looked around the sanctum one more time, at the healthy dragons singing their crystal songs, at the mother dragon who watched him with ancient wisdom in her eyes. He thought about his fellow humans laboring in the lower levels of the palace, about the thousands of dying dragons across the stars, about the chance to transform the relationship between 2 species. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said, "but I have some conditions of my own." Valeria raised an eyebrow, a very human expression on her alien face. "You are hardly in a position to negotiate, young human. With respect, Your Majesty, I'm the only person who can save your dragons. That puts me in an excellent position to negotiate." For a moment, the Empress looked shocked. Then, to Marcus's surprise, she began to laugh. It was a sound like wind chimes in a crystal cave, musical and pure. "Indeed it does," she said. "Very well, Marcus Chen of Earth. State your terms." The journey to the primary research station took 18 hours at maximum warp. 18 hours during which Marcus learned more about the Zephyrian Empire than he'd absorbed in 3 months of kitchen work. Empress Valeria had agreed to his conditions with surprising grace, and now he sat in the observation deck of her personal flagship, watching stars blur past while she explained the scope of what they were attempting. "The quantum resonance network spans 47 star systems," she said, her 4 hands manipulating a holographic display that showed the Empire's communication infrastructure. "Each major world has a primary crystal array that can transmit quantum-coherent signals across interstellar distances. If we can encode your biofield signature into the network, we can theoretically broadcast it to every dragon in the Empire simultaneously." Marcus studied the display, noting how the network resembled the neural pathways of a vast brain. "And my conditions? You'll honor them even if this works?" Valeria nodded solemnly. "All humans in the Empire will be granted full citizenship and the right to return to Earth if they choose. Those who remain will serve as dragon keepers with status equal to our highest nobles. And yes, formal diplomatic contact will be established with Earth itself." The terms had seemed almost too good to be true when Marcus had proposed them, but the Empress had accepted immediately. Perhaps the lives of 10,000 dragons were worth any price, or perhaps she understood that the future of her empire might depend on maintaining good relations with humanity. "Your Majesty," Captain Zex's voice came through the communication system. "We're approaching the research station. Dr. Thessarian is prepared to begin immediately." Through the viewports, Marcus could see their destination, a massive crystal structure that looked like it had grown rather than been built, its faceted surfaces catching and refracting the light of the local star into patterns of impossible beauty. The station rotated slowly, its bioluminescent sections pulsing in complex rhythms. Dr. Thessarian is our foremost expert on quantum biology, Valeria explained as they prepared to dock. If anyone can safely map your biofield and translate it into a format the network can transmit, it's her. The docking process was smooth, but Marcus felt his nervousness growing as they made their way through the station's corridors. The architecture was even more alien than the palace, with surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid crystal. Research staff moved through the halls with purposeful urgency, their conversations conducted in rapid technical jargon that his translation implant could barely follow. Dr. Thessarian turned out to be even more imposing than the Empress, her tall frame adorned with multiple sets of arms and sensory organs that marked her as a member of the Zephyrian scientific caste. Her laboratory was a wonderland of crystal arrays and energy fields, dominated by a chamber that looked disturbingly like a medical scanner designed for a species that lived in 4 dimensions. "The young human who heals dragons," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache. "I must admit, when the Empress described your abilities, I was skeptical. But the quantum resonance readings from the sanctum are extraordinary." She gestured with 2 of her 6 arms toward a holographic display showing energy patterns that looked like 3-dimensional music. "Your biofield signature exhibits quantum coherence patterns that should be impossible for carbon-based life. It's as if your evolution occurred in a completely different universe." "Maybe it did," Marcus replied, remembering his father's theories about Earth's unique position in a cosmic magnetic anomaly zone. "Our scientists always wondered why our solar system seemed to have properties that didn't match the rest of the galaxy." "Fascinating," Dr. Thessarian murmured, making notes with 4 hands while gesturing with the other 2. "But we have little time for theoretical discussions. Reports from the outer colonies indicate that dragon mortality is accelerating. We have perhaps 12 hours before the damage becomes irreversible." The scanning process was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The crystal chamber surrounded him with energy fields that seemed to penetrate every cell of his body, mapping not just his physical structure, but the quantum signatures of his life force itself. Through the transparent walls, he could see Dr. Thessarian and her team working frantically to translate the readings into something the communication network could understand. "The complexity is extraordinary," Dr. Thessarian reported to the Empress. "Human quantum signatures contain thousands of harmonic layers, each one contributing to the overall stability effect. It's like trying to record a symphony and then teach it to a crystal that has never heard music." Hours passed in a blur of technical adjustments and careful calibration. Marcus remained conscious throughout the process, but he could feel something fundamental changing inside him. The crystal arrays weren't just reading his biofield, they were harmonizing with it, creating a resonance between human biology and Zephyrian technology that had never existed before. "We're ready for the initial test," Dr. Thessarian announced finally. "I've prepared a localized transmission to the research station's own dragon colony. If the encoded signature can heal them, we'll know the process works." Through the chamber's walls, Marcus could see a smaller version of the royal sanctum, where a dozen research dragons lay in various stages of the crystal sickness. As Dr. Thessarian activated the transmission array, the chamber filled with a harmonic frequency that seemed to vibrate in Marcus's bones. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The research dragons began to glow as the transmitted biofield signature reached them, their crystalline bodies resonating with the quantum patterns that Marcus had generated. Cracks sealed, dark spots faded, and internal lights blazed with renewed vigor. Within minutes, All 12 dragons were healthy and singing their crystal songs of joy. "Incredible," Dr. Thessarian breathed. "The transmission not only works, it's more efficient than direct contact. The crystal network amplifies and purifies the quantum signature, making it even more effective." Empress Valeria stepped forward. Her 4 arms crossed in a gesture of satisfaction. "Begin the empire-wide transmission immediately. Alert all colonial governors that relief is coming." As the research team prepared for the full-scale broadcast, Marcus felt a strange sensation building in his chest. The quantum resonance between his biofield and the crystal arrays was growing stronger, creating a connection that stretched across space itself. He could sense the network activating, node by node, system by system, carrying his life energy to distant worlds. And then, suddenly, he could feel them all. 10,000 dragons across 47 star systems, their crystalline minds touching his human consciousness for one incredible moment. He experienced their pain as the sickness consumed them, their fear as they faced extinction, and their overwhelming joy as the healing energy reached them. The sensation was so intense that he cried out, his voice joining the crystal songs of dragons on a dozen different worlds. Through the quantum link, Marcus glimpsed worlds of impossible beauty, crystal cities that grew like forests, starships made of living crystal that sang as they flew, civilizations built around the partnership between the Zephyrian people and their dragon companions. He saw the terror that had gripped the Empire as the dragons began to die, and the relief that now flooded through billions of minds as the crisis ended. But more than that, he sensed something unexpected. Gratitude. Not just from the dragons, but from the Zephyrian people themselves. They had built their entire civilization around these creatures, and the thought of losing them had shaken them to their very core. The humans who had seemed like primitive refugees were now revealed as the key to their survival. The transmission lasted for 6 hours, during which Marcus remained connected to the vast network, his consciousness spread across the Empire. When it finally ended and the quantum resonance faded, he collapsed in the crystal chamber, drained but triumphant. "Report!" Empress Valeria commanded as her medical staff checked Marcus's vital signs. "Complete success," Dr. Thessarian announced, her 6 arms dancing across multiple control panels simultaneously. "Dragon colonies across the Empire are reporting full recovery. Mortality rates have dropped to 0, and regeneration is proceeding normally. The crisis is over." Valeria closed her eyes in relief, her 4 arms shaking slightly. Marcus realized that beneath her imperial composure, she had been terrified of losing the creatures that were the soul of her civilization. The burden of ruling 10 billion people across dozens of worlds was heavy enough without facing the extinction of the species that made their way of life possible. "Your Majesty," Marcus said weakly from the medical gurney, "there's something else. During the transmission, I sensed something about the dragons that you might not know." "What do you mean?" "They're not just partners to your people. They're evolutionary companions. The quantum resonance between Zephyrian biology and dragon consciousness has been shaping both species for millennia. Losing them wouldn't just have meant losing beautiful creatures. It would have meant losing part of what makes your people who they are." Dr. Thessarian's sensory organs flared with excitement. "That would explain the quantum entanglement patterns I detected during the healing process. The dragons aren't separate from Zephyrian civilization. They're an integral part of it at the molecular level." "Which means," Valeria said slowly, "that humans have not just saved the dragons. They have saved us as well." Over the following weeks, as the Empire processed the implications of what had occurred, Marcus found himself in the unprecedented position of being both a hero and a bridge between worlds. The other humans in the Empire were indeed granted citizenship, and many chose to remain as dragon keepers, forming the nucleus of a new caste dedicated to maintaining the quantum harmony between species. But the most significant change came when the first human diplomatic mission arrived from Earth, alerted by Empress Valeria's formal message of contact. The human ambassadors were amazed to discover that their lost colonist had not only survived, but had become instrumental in saving an entire interstellar civilization. Marcus stood in the royal sanctum, now officially recognized as the first Dragon Keeper, watching as human and Zephyrian children played together while young dragons flew overhead. The mother dragon approached him, her ancient consciousness touching his mind with warm affection. "What do you think she's telling you?" asked Ambassador Chen, Marcus's own aunt, who had arrived with the Earth delegation. "That this is just the beginning," Marcus replied, smiling as a small dragon landed on his shoulder. "The universe is full of species that might benefit from the kind of biological diversity that humans carry. We're not just explorers or colonists anymore, we're healers." Through the great crystal windows of the sanctum, Marcus could see human and Zephyrian scientists working together on the research stations that orbited the palace. They were studying the quantum resonance phenomenon, trying to understand how it might be applied to other forms of interspecies cooperation. "The Empress wants to establish joint research programs," Ambassador Chen continued. "Humans and Zephyrians working together to explore the galaxy, looking for other civilizations that might benefit from our biological partnership." Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of it in his bones. Humanity had always been good at adapting, at finding solutions that others missed. But now they had proof that their chaotic, contradictory, gloriously messy evolutionary heritage could be exactly what other species needed to thrive. A young Zephyrian child approached, her 4 arms extended toward the dragon on Marcus's shoulder. The creature fluttered over to her, its crystal song harmonizing with her natural biofield. The healing that flowed between them was gentler than what Marcus could provide, but it was real and lasting. "The children learn quickly," Marcus observed. "Within a generation, maybe 2, you won't need humans to maintain the dragon's health. Your people are already adapting, incorporating some of our quantum chaos into your own biology." "And what happens to humans then?" Ambassador Chen asked. Marcus looked out at the stars, visible even in daylight through the palace's crystal spires. Somewhere out there were other worlds, other species, other impossible problems waiting for impossible solutions. "Then we do what humans have always done," he said. "We explore, we adapt, we find new ways to help and new places to call home." The mother dragon sang softly, her voice joined by dozens of others throughout the sanctum. The sound was picked up by the palace's crystal arrays and transmitted across the empire, a song of health and partnership that reached every world where dragons flew. Marcus Chen, once a kitchen worker from a crashed transport ship, now stood at the center of an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. And as he listened to the crystal songs of creatures made of living light, he knew that the greatest adventures were still ahead.